The smell of saffron rice and roasted lamb filled the air of the Al-Barsha villa. Crystal wine glasses clinked against imported porcelain plates. Laughter echoed through rooms where Persian rugs cost more than most Filipinos earned in a decade. But beneath the marble floors and behind the silk curtains, 4 women were about to discover they'd been living the same lie. 1 wedding certificate, 3 secret marriages, and a man who believed his wealth could buy silence forever. By morning, the villa's white marble would be stained red. Police sirens would shatter the desert quiet, and Rosa Delgado would transform from devoted wife into something she never imagined she could become. A survivor covered in the blood of the man who promised her forever. Stay with us, because this isn't just about polygamy or betrayal. This is about how far desperation will push someone, about the moment when survival instinct overrides every moral teaching you've ever received, about 4 women who should have been enemies but became something far more dangerous, allies in their own liberation. How does a fairytale romance turn into a crime scene? What happens when the person you trust most is a stranger wearing a wedding ring? And why do the most elaborate lies always unravel at the worst possible moment? Rosa Marie Delgado was born on December 3, 1995, in Pampanga, Philippines. The third of 6 children in a house where love was abundant, but money disappeared faster than morning fog. Her father, Rodrigo, drove a jeepney through Manila's suffocating traffic for 14 hours daily, his hands permanently calloused from gripping the steering wheel through rain and heat. Her mother, Elena, sold street food from a cart outside their barangay, frying turon and banana Q while praying the day's earnings would cover rice and utilities. Rosa's childhood was defined by careful calculations: how to stretch 1 chicken across 8 people, which sibling needed school supplies most urgently, whether to pay the electric bill or buy medicine when someone got sick. She grew up understanding that survival required sacrifice and that dreams were luxuries poor families couldn't afford. Rosa was different. While her siblings played in the narrow streets, she studied by the light of a single bulb that swayed with every passing truck. At 16, she was tutoring younger children for extra pesos. At 18, she was working double shifts at a call center while finishing her business administration degree at a state university. Education wasn't just escape for Rosa. It was oxygen. It was the only ladder that reached above the poverty that had claimed 3 generations of Delgados. She graduated in 2017 with honors and immediately faced the reality that breaks millions of Filipino university graduates. There were no jobs. Or rather, there were jobs that paid 15,000 pesos monthly, barely enough to survive, impossible to save, meaningless for supporting a family that depended on her success. The overseas employment agencies lined Quezon Avenue like promises wrapped in glossy brochures. Dubai, Singapore, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, countries where even household staff earned more than Philippine professionals. Rosa had resisted for 2 years, watching friends and classmates leave for the Middle East, their tearful airport goodbyes followed by Facebook photos of shopping malls and luxury cars. But in November 2019, her father's jeepney broke down beyond repair. The repair costs exceeded their annual savings. Without his income, the family faced eviction, utilities cut off, and the very real possibility of her younger siblings dropping out of school. Rosa made the decision that millions of Filipinos make every year. She would leave everything she knew to save the people she loved. The recruitment agency specialized in matching Filipino professionals with Gulf employers seeking wives rather than workers. The language they used was careful, borderline legal. Cultural exchange programs, professional introduction services, international marriage facilitation. What they were really selling was access to wealthy Middle Eastern men seeking Asian brides and desperate Filipino women seeking financial security. Rosa told herself she was being practical, not desperate. She was 24 years old, educated, attractive, and unwilling to spend her life watching her family struggle. If marriage to a foreigner could provide stability, why was that different from the arranged marriages that had defined human civilization for millennia? The profile she created emphasized her education, her family values, her Catholic upbringing, and her desire to build a meaningful partnership based on mutual respect. She uploaded photos that showed her smile, not just her body. She wrote paragraphs about her dreams of helping her family while building a life of purpose and dignity. Khalil Hassan Mansour appeared in her inbox 3 weeks later like an answer to prayers. She'd been too practical to speak aloud. His profile read like a romance novel written by someone who understood exactly what struggling women wanted to hear. 38 years old, civil engineer with his own construction consulting firm, educated in London with an MBA from Imperial College. Interests included architecture, classical music, humanitarian work, and finding a partner who valued substance over superficial luxury. His photos showed a handsome man with kind eyes and a warm smile. Not the flashy gold chains and luxury cars that characterized most Gulf profiles, but tasteful business attire and casual shots at construction sites, suggesting a man who actually worked rather than simply spending inherited wealth. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours. Khalil asked about her family with what seemed like genuine interest. He listened when she spoke about her father's pride and her mother's sacrifices. He shared his own story about growing up middle class in Dubai before his family's construction business succeeded during the pre-2008 boom. He spoke about losing his mother to cancer and understanding the weight of family responsibility. "I'm not looking for a housemaid or a trophy," he wrote in careful English. "I want a partner, someone intelligent who can challenge me, someone with her own dreams that I can help make real. I've been married to my work for too long. I want to build something more meaningful." Over the following weeks, their connection deepened through daily video calls that stretched into the Manila night and Dubai morning. Khalil never pushed for intimate photos or made inappropriate comments. He asked about her university studies, her career aspirations, her thoughts on raising children and balancing tradition with modernity. He sent money once, after Rosa mentioned her father's medical bills, presenting it as a loan between friends rather than a transaction. The proposal came on Christmas Eve 2019 during a video call where Khalil appeared nervous for the first time. "Rosa, I know this is fast by traditional standards, but I'm 38 years old. I know what I want. You're intelligent, beautiful, kind, and strong. You make me laugh and challenge my thinking. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Rosa's practical mind warned her that 2 months wasn't enough time to truly know someone. But her heart, worn down by years of struggle and hopeful despite her best efforts to remain cynical, heard something else. This was her chance, her family's chance, a pathway to the life she'd been fighting for since childhood. She said yes. The arrangements moved quickly after that. Khalil handled all paperwork, visa sponsorship, and legal requirements. He arranged for Rosa's medical examinations and documentation through connections that bypassed the usual bureaucratic delays. He sent money for her to purchase appropriate clothing and gifts for her family. He even wired funds to cover 6 months of her family's expenses while she settled into her new life. In February 2020, just weeks before COVID-19 would shut down international travel, Rosa boarded a flight from Manila to Dubai. Her mother's tears at the airport mixed with desperate hope. Her father gripped her hands and whispered, "Make sure he treats you well. If anything feels wrong, you come home." Her younger siblings clung to her with the fierce love of people who understood she was leaving to save them. Dubai appeared below the airplane like a circuit board of lights against black desert. The skyline rose impossibly tall, glass and steel testaments to wealth and ambition. As the plane descended, Rosa clutched her rosary and prayed, for wisdom, for protection, for this gamble to be worth the price of leaving everything she'd ever known. Khalil waited at arrivals in a crisp white Kanjura, holding flowers and wearing the warm smile she recognized from months of video calls. Their embrace felt natural despite the awkwardness of finally occupying the same physical space. He kissed her forehead, respectful of her Catholic values and the public setting. "Welcome home," he whispered. "Our life starts now." The drive to their villa in Al Barsha revealed a Dubai that existed beyond tourist brochures. Khalil pointed out landmarks, shopping districts, and the construction projects his firm was consulting on. He spoke about their future with concrete plans rather than vague promises. A proper wedding celebration once she settled in. Opportunities for her to finish her MBA if she wanted. Visits home for her family twice yearly. Children when they both felt ready. The villa itself took Rosa's breath away. 3 stories of modern Arabic architecture, with a private garden, swimming pool, and separate majlis for entertaining guests. The interior featured mashrabiyah screens filtering light into geometric patterns, Italian marble floors, and furniture that looked imported from European showrooms. "This is ours," Khalil said, watching her reaction carefully. I know it's probably overwhelming, but I want you to feel this is your home, not mine. Change anything you want, make it reflect both of us. That first night, Kala was patient and gentle, allowing Rosa to adjust to the overwhelming changes in her life. They talked until dawn about their hopes and fears. He shared his dream of expanding his business while maintaining ethical practices in an industry known for exploitation. She spoke about wanting to use their resources to help other Filipino workers in Dubai, to create opportunities rather than just enjoying privilege. "We're going to build something beautiful together," Kahlo promised as morning light filtered through the curtains. "I'm so grateful you trusted me." Rosa believed him completely. The first 6 months of marriage felt like living inside a dream Rosa had been too practical to imagine. Kahlo was everything his messages had promised. Attentive without being controlling, generous without being condescending, affectionate in ways that made her feel cherished rather than owned. He encouraged her to explore Dubai independently, providing her with a car, credit cards, and genuine freedom that contrasted sharply with the horror stories she'd heard about Middle Eastern marriages. When she wanted to volunteer with the Filipino Community Center, he connected her with organizers and donated to their programs. When she mentioned missing her family, he surprised her with video call equipment and unlimited international calling. Their social life revolved around Kahlo's business associates and their wives. Dinners at restaurants where meals cost what Rosa's father once earned monthly. Brunches at beach clubs where infinity pools merged with the Arabian Gulf. Cultural events at the Opera House and Dubai Mall fashion shows where modest luxury became Rosa's new normal. But beneath the perfect surface, tiny inconsistencies began accumulating like cracks in fine porcelain. Kahlo traveled frequently for work, 2 or 3 nights weekly, sometimes entire weeks for major projects. His explanations were always plausible. Construction oversight in Abu Dhabi, client meetings in Sharjah, government contract negotiations that required his physical presence. Rosa had no reason to doubt him. His business was legitimate, his success evident in their lifestyle and the respect he commanded among peers. What Rosa noticed was more subtle. Phone calls he'd take in another room, his voice lowered. Text messages that made him smile in ways that seemed personal rather than professional. Calendar blocks on his phone that simply said appointments without details. When she asked casually about his schedule, his answers were thorough but somehow evasive, providing information without revealing anything meaningful. The other peculiarity involved their social circle. Despite months in Dubai, Rosa had never met Kahlo's family. His father, he explained, was elderly and traditional, uncomfortable with the idea of his son marrying a foreigner. "He'll come around," Kahlo assured her. "Give him time to adjust. For now, you're my priority, not his approval." Rosa's Filipino friends, other women who had married Gulf nationals or expatriates, shared their own stories of cultural adjustment. Most had experienced similar family resistance. "It's normal," they told her over coffee at the Filipino Community Center. "The older generation doesn't understand that love crosses borders. Eventually they accept it or they don't. Either way, you build your own family." But one conversation stuck with Rosa like a splinter working deeper beneath skin. Maria, a Filipina who had been in Dubai for 8 years, pulled her aside during a charity event. "Be careful, 8," she whispered, using the Tagalog term for older sister. "Not everyone is what they seem here. Dubai is beautiful, but it's built on secrets. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling." "What do you mean?" Rosa asked, her stomach tightening with undefined anxiety. Maria glanced around before continuing. "Just keep your eyes open. Documentation, paperwork. Make sure everything is exactly what he says it is. Some men here, they live double lives, triple lives sometimes. The laws protect them more than they protect us." Rosa wanted to dismiss the warning as paranoia or jealousy. But the seed was planted, and seeds grow even in the most carefully maintained gardens. The discovery began innocently enough on an October evening in 2020. Kahlo was in Abu Dhabi for 3 days on a government project. Rosa was home alone, reorganizing their shared office where Kahlo kept business files, and she had started managing household accounts. She was looking for their marriage certificate to make copies for a bank account update when she opened a locked drawer that Kahlo had recently left open by mistake. Inside was a folder labeled Personal Documents. Rosa hesitated. She trusted her husband. They shared everything. But Maria's words echoed, and her practical mind reasoned that if these were truly shared documents, she should know what was there. The first marriage certificate she found was theirs. Rosa Maria Delgado and Khalil Hassan Mansour married February 15, 2020 in Dubai Civil Court. Everything correct, everything she expected. The second marriage certificate stopped her breathing. Layla Saif Rashid and Khalil Hassan Mansour married November 3, 2015. Same husband, different bride, 5 years earlier. Rosa's hands trembled as she kept searching. The third certificate, Amira Nur Khalifa and Khalil Hassan Mansour, married June 8, 2012. The fourth, Fatima Yasmin Harib and Khalil Hassan Mansour, married September 20, 2009. 4 wives, 11 years of deception. Multiple households maintained through carefully compartmentalized lies. The folder contained more than certificates. Bank statements showing transfers to 3 different residences. Property documents for villas in Mirdif, Jumeirah, and Dubai Marina. Insurance policies listing different beneficiaries. School records for children Rosa never knew existed. 6 children across 3 marriages, ranging from infant to 10 years old. Rosa's vision tunneled. The room spun. She stumbled to the bathroom and vomited until only bile remained, her body rejecting the reality her mind couldn't process. She wasn't his wife. She was his 4th wife, a secret among secrets maintained through calendars and careful scheduling. Every business trip was rotation. Every evening apart was time spent with another family. The man who slept beside her, who made love to her, who promised her forever, was a stranger wearing a wedding ring. The betrayal cut deeper than infidelity. This was systematic deception elevated to lifestyle. Khalil hadn't made a mistake or a moment of weakness. He had architected an elaborate conspiracy that required constant maintenance and absolute compartmentalization. He'd looked into her eyes, spoken about building their future, made her believe she was chosen and special. She was just the newest addition to his collection. Rosa's practical mind kicked in despite her emotional freefall. She photographed every document. She copied bank statements and property records. She created digital backups and emailed them to herself and her sister in Manila. If this was going to explode, she needed evidence that couldn't be destroyed or denied. Then she waited, not out of indecision, but out of strategy. Khalil was returning the next evening. She needed to decide what happened next, and that decision required information and planning rather than emotional reaction. That night, Rosa called her sister using WhatsApp, taking advantage of the time difference. Speaking in rapid Tagalog, she explained everything. Her sister's shock mirrored her own from hours earlier. "Come home," her sister begged. "Right now, leave everything and come home." But Rosa's mind was working through implications. If she left immediately, Khalil would know she discovered his secret. He would move assets, hide evidence, potentially claim she'd stolen from him or fabricate reasons to prevent her leaving legally. Dubai's legal system, despite modernization, still favored nationals over foreigners, especially in family disputes. More importantly, Rosa thought about the other 3 wives. Did they know about each other? Were they victims like her or complicit partners in Khalil's deception? And what about the children, innocent casualties of their father's lies? "I need to meet them," Rosa told her sister. "The other wives, I need to understand what's really happening before I decide what to do." The confrontation Rosa planned for Khalil's return never happened the way she anticipated. Because when Khalil arrived home the next evening, he wasn't alone. The villa's doorbell rang at 6:47 p.m. Rosa had spent the entire day rehearsing her confrontation. She'd planned her words, prepared her evidence, decided on her demands. But when she opened the door, her carefully constructed plan evaporated. Khalil stood on the threshold with a woman Rosa didn't recognize. Emirati national dress, designer abaya, expensive jewelry. Her face was beautiful and cold, her eyes assessing Rosa like an accountant reviewing assets. "Rosa, this is Layla," Khalil said, his voice carrying an edge she'd never heard before. "My first wife, we need to talk." The 3 of them sat in the majlis, triangle formation, tension thick enough to choke on. Layla spoke first, her English perfect and cutting. "You found the documents." It wasn't a question. Rosa's stomach dropped. "How did you know?" "The drawer, he told me it was open when he returned yesterday. We have cameras." Layla's smile was sharp. You're not as clever as you think, little Filipino bride. Kalo's expression was unreadable. The warm, loving husband had disappeared, replaced by someone calculating and cold. Rosa, I can explain. Explain, Rosa's voice cracked. You're married to 3 other women, you have 6 children, you've been lying to me since the day we met. What possible explanation exists for that? Layla laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, Habibti, you really thought you were special, that he chose you for love, she turned to Khalil. Did you use the sick mother story with this one too, or the looking for a partner nonsense? Khalil's jaw tightened. Layla, enough. No, Layla stood, pacing like a caged panther. She deserves to know what she married into, what we've all married into. Over the next hour, the truth emerged in jagged pieces. Khalil had married his first wife, Fatima, in 2009 as a traditional arranged marriage. She lived in the Murdiff villa with their 3 children. She was conservative, traditional, focused on family, and rarely questioning her husband's schedule. He'd married Layla in 2015, presenting himself as a widower who needed help raising his children. She lived in Jumeirah with their 2 children. Educated, ambitious, she'd married him for social advancement and financial security, not love. Amira, wife 3, believed she was his only wife after a divorce from Fatima. She lived in Dubai Marina with their infant son. Young, naive, completely unaware of the other households. And Rosa, wife 4, the foreigner who could be controlled through visa dependency and cultural isolation. The one who wouldn't have local family asking questions or legal knowledge to challenge his arrangements. Islamic law allows 4 wives, Khalil said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. I've provided for all of you beautiful homes, financial security, everything you need. But it doesn't allow lies, Rosa shot back, her Catholic school education suddenly becoming weapon. Islamic law requires the first wife's permission and all wives must know about each other. You violated your own religious laws while hiding behind them. Layla's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across her face. The Filipino knows her Sharia law, interesting. The sound of the doorbell interrupted the tense standoff. Khalil's face went white. No, she wasn't supposed to. Layla moved to the door before he could stop her. When she opened it, 2 more women stood outside. One in full abaya, traditional and clearly uncomfortable. The other young, modern, hijab styled fashionably, holding an infant. Fatima and Amira, all 4 wives now face to face in the same room for the first time. What happened next would later be described by investigators as a powder keg meeting a spark. 4 women, each betrayed differently but absolutely. 4 women who should have been enemies but recognized their common victimization in each other's faces. Fatima spoke first, her Arabic rapid and furious. Layla translated, her voice carrying bitter satisfaction. She's asking if we're all prostitutes he's collected, if her 10 years of loyalty and 3 children mean nothing. Amira clutched her baby, tears streaming. He told me the others were divorced. He said I was his new beginning. I gave up my university scholarship for him. The room fell silent, except for the baby's whimpering and Fatima's quiet sobs. 4 women staring at one man who had promised each of them a different version of forever. Khalil attempted damage control, his voice taking on the smooth persuasiveness Rosa recognized from their courtship. You're all overreacting. This is legal. This is my right. I've taken care of all of you. You live in luxury. Your families are supported. What more do you want? Truth, Rosa said quietly. We wanted truth, respect, to be treated like human beings instead of possessions you rotate based on your schedule. You're foreigners, Khalil snapped, his mask finally cracking completely. You should be grateful. Do you know how many Filipinas would trade places with you? How many women beg for what I've given you? The contempt in his voice was like acid. This was the real Khalil, stripped of charm and manipulation. A man who viewed women as acquisitions, wives as status symbols to be collected and managed. What happened next unfolded with the terrible inevitability of a nightmare. Khalil tried to leave to escape the confrontation spiraling beyond his control. Layla blocked his path. No, we're not finished. You're going to sit here and explain to each of us exactly how you've been maintaining 4 households. Every lie, every business trip, every night you weren't where you said you'd be. Khalil shoved her aside. Get out of my way. That's when everything broke. Not dramatically, but with the quiet crack of something fundamental giving way. Layla shoved back. Fatima moved to restrain Khalil. Amira screamed. Rosa stood frozen, watching her life detonate in real time. Khalil swung wildly, his fist connecting with Fatima's face. The sound was sickening. Blood sprayed from her nose across the white marble floor. Amira lunged at him, maternal instinct overriding fear. He threw her back with shocking violence, her head cracking against the marble column. That's when Rosa moved. Not thinking, not planning. Pure survival instinct channeled through years of suppressed rage at poverty, at betrayal, at being treated like a commodity. The decorative dagger hanging on the wall, ornamental, ceremonial, kept sharp because Khalil was obsessive about aesthetics, was in her hand before conscious thought registered. She didn't plan to kill him. She planned to stop him. But when Khalil turned, his face twisted with rage, his hand rising to strike her, muscle memory from her father's self-defense lessons took over. She struck once, aiming for his shoulder to disable him. The blade sank deep into his chest instead. Time fractured. Khalil's expression shifted from rage to shock to disbelief. He looked down at the growing red stain spreading across his pristine white kandjara, then up at Rosa with eyes that asked a question he'd never get to voice. He collapsed slowly, almost gracefully, like a building in controlled demolition. The marble floor, imported from Carrara at devastating expense, received its first organic stain. Khalil Hassan Mansour, civil engineer, husband to 4 women, father to 6 children, master manipulator, bled out on the floor of the villa he'd purchased with money meant to build dreams. Rosa stood over him, the dagger still in her hand, her mind white static and ringing silence. Around her, 3 other women stared in equal parts horror and relief. The baby's crying was the only sound in the villa where secrets had finally demanded payment in blood. Layla moved first. She picked up her phone, and for one terrible moment Rosa thought she was calling the police to report a murder. Instead, Layla called her lawyer. "We need help," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the trauma unfolding. "There's been an incident, self-defense, 4 witnesses, come now." Dubai police arrived at the Al Barsha villa at 7:23 p.m., responding to a report of domestic violence turned fatal. What they found challenged every assumption about family dynamics and cultural expectations. 4 women from different worlds, Emirati, Filipino, Arab expat, sitting together in traumatized silence. 1 man dead from a single chest wound. A baby crying. Blood pooling on marble floors that cost more than justice typically allowed for foreign workers. Senior Detective Ahmed Al-Mansouri, a 20-year veteran of Dubai CID, took lead on the investigation. His initial assessment suggested a straightforward case. Foreign domestic worker murders her sponsor husband. The legal machinery typically processed such cases with predictable efficiency. Arrest, trial, conviction, deportation after sentence completion. But this case was anything but straightforward. The presence of multiple wives, all with documented proof of legal marriage to the deceased, created unprecedented complications. Under UAE law, polygamy was legal but required specific conditions: equal treatment of all wives, their knowledge of each other, and proper legal documentation. Khalil's system violated every requirement. The investigation revealed a financial structure designed to hide 3 households from each other through separate bank accounts, properties registered under different corporate entities, and a schedule maintained through encrypted calendar apps that compartmentalized his life into neat segments. Forensic accountants discovered that Khalil had been using his construction firm to launder money through fake vendor contracts, inflating project costs to generate cash that funded his multiple households. The fraud exceeded 12 million dirhams, affecting government contracts and private developments. What appeared as successful business was actually systematic theft enabled by corrupt officials who received kickbacks for ignoring irregularities. The medical examiner's report provided crucial evidence for the defense case building momentum. Rosa's single stab wound had struck with desperate force but amateur technique. The angle suggested defensive reaction rather than planned attack. Khalil's injuries to Fatima and Amira, documented through emergency room reports from that night, established him as the primary aggressor. Most significantly, Layla's immediate call to her lawyer rather than emergency services raised questions. She'd contacted legal help before medical help, suggesting awareness that the situation required legal protection more than medical intervention. Her lawyer, one of Dubai's most prominent female attorneys specializing in women's rights cases, arrived before the ambulance and immediately began documenting evidence before police could control the narrative. The case became international news within hours. Filipino media picked up the story. OFW kills husband in self-defense after discovering polygamy. International outlets framed it as Filipino bride trapped in illegal polygamous marriage fights back. Human rights organizations rallied behind Rosa, while conservative groups condemned her violence regardless of circumstances. The trial began in January 2021 and lasted 8 weeks. The prosecution attempted to frame the case as premeditated murder motivated by jealousy after Rosa discovered her husband's other wives. They argued that a reasonable person would have sought legal remediation rather than violence. The defense, led by Layla's attorney who agreed to represent all 4 women, presented a different narrative. This was a case of systematic abuse, fraud, and entrapment. Khalil had violated Islamic law, UAE civil law, and basic human decency through his deceptions. He'd created a psychological prison for 4 women, controlling them through financial dependence, visa manipulation, and calculated isolation. Expert testimony from psychologists explained coercive control and trauma responses. How victims of systematic manipulation often experience temporary breaks from rational decision-making when confronted with the extent of betrayal. How Rosa's actions fit the pattern of acute stress response rather than premeditated violence. The 3 other wives testified, their stories corroborating the pattern of manipulation and their presence during the fatal confrontation. Fatima, still healing from her broken nose, described 10 years of emotional abuse masked as traditional marriage. Amira, holding her infant son, explained how Khalil had isolated her from family and friends. Layla, composed and articulate, detailed the financial fraud she'd discovered weeks before the incident, how she'd been planning to report Khalil to authorities. Most damaging to the prosecution was the revelation that Layla had known about some of the other wives and had contacted them separately, planning to expose Khalil's fraud. The gathering at Rosa's villa that night wasn't an accident. It was Layla's orchestrated confrontation designed to bring all the deception into the light. Rosa's testimony lasted 2 days. She spoke in clear English, translating to Tagalog for her family watching via video link from Manila. She described her childhood poverty, her dreams of helping her family, her careful vetting of Khalil before agreeing to marriage. She explained the discovery of the marriage certificates and her plan to confront him peacefully. Then she described the violence that erupted, Khalil's transformation from charming businessman to brutal attacker. The moment when he hit Fatima and threw Amira against marble. The split-second decision when survival overrode everything else. "I didn't want to kill him," Rosa said, tears streaming. "I wanted him to stop, to let us go, but he was going to keep hurting us, keep controlling us, keep treating us like possessions he could arrange and rearrange based on his schedule." The verdict came on March 3, 2021. Rosa was acquitted of murder charges based on self-defense. However, she was found guilty of manslaughter with mitigating circumstances and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, with time served counting toward the sentence. She would be eligible for deportation after completing 18 months. The UAE government, embarrassed by international attention on the case's systematic fraud and legal violations, conducted an audit of marriage records and found 47 similar cases of illegal polygamy where men had hidden wives from each other through fraudulent documentation. New regulations requiring spousal notification and consent for subsequent marriages were implemented. Layla filed civil suits against Khalil's estate, seeking compensation for all 4 wives and 6 children. The assets, once untangled from corporate structures and fraud schemes, were divided among the families. Rosa's portion, approximately 2.3 million dirhams, was placed in trust for her family with restrictions preventing Khalil's relatives from claiming it. The 3 other wives formed an unlikely support network, helping each other navigate widowhood and single parenthood in a culture that stigmatized both. Fatima returned to her family with her children, using her settlement to open a small business. Amira completed her university degree and became an advocate for marriage fraud victims. Layla continued her work as an investor while privately funding legal aid for women trapped in abusive situations. Rosa served 16 months in Dubai's Al Awir Women's Prison before being released and deported to the Philippines in July 2022. She returned to Manila not as the defeated victim of exploitation, but as a symbol of resistance against systems that commodified foreign workers, particularly women. Her story became case study material in international human rights law courses. Filipino advocacy groups used her case to push for stronger protections for overseas workers. The phrase, "Remember Rosa Delgado," became shorthand in expatriate communities for recognizing and resisting manipulation. Rosa herself struggled with the weight of taking a life, despite the legal ruling of self-defense and the clear evidence of systematic abuse. She attended therapy, reconnected with her Catholic faith through counseling with understanding priests who helped her distinguish between necessary survival and moral culpability. She used her settlement money to establish a foundation providing legal assistance and emergency housing for Filipino workers in crisis situations abroad. The Rosa Delgado Foundation operated shelters in Manila and satellite offices in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, funded through her settlement and donations from successful OFWs who recognized themselves in her story. In interviews, Rosa was careful to frame her experience not as revenge or triumph, but as tragedy with educational value. "I didn't set out to kill anyone," she told a Filipino news program in 2023. "I set out to build a better life for my family. When that dream became a nightmare, I fought to survive. That's all any of us can do when systems fail to protect us." The deeper questions her case raised continue to reverberate. How do we protect vulnerable workers in foreign countries where power imbalances are enshrined in law? What responsibility do sending countries have to vet opportunities that look too good to be true? How do we balance cultural relativism with universal human rights? These questions don't have easy answers, but Rosa's story provides a case study in recognizing warning signs before situations escalate to tragedy. Looking back at Rosa's journey, the red flags were visible from the beginning. She wasn't naive or stupid. She was desperate, which predators exploit with surgical precision. Understanding these patterns could save your life or the life of someone you love. Stage 1, the perfect profile. Khalil's introduction was calculated to appeal specifically to Rosa's vulnerabilities. He emphasized his education and professional success to contrast with her economic insecurity. He mentioned losing his mother to appeal to her nurturing instincts. He spoke about wanting a partner rather than a servant to distinguish himself from stereotypical Gulf employers. Warning sign: when someone seems too perfectly suited to your needs, pause. Real people have complexity and contradictions. Perfect matches are usually performances. Stage 2, rush timeline. From first contact to marriage proposal took less than 2 months. Khalil used the upcoming COVID travel restrictions as urgency trigger, but the speed prevented Rosa from doing thorough background checks or consulting with people who could have investigated his claims. Warning sign: predators rush you because time is their enemy. Legitimate relationships can withstand scrutiny and patience. If someone pressures you to commit before you're ready, ask why the hurry. Stage 3, isolation tactics. Khalil never introduced Rosa to his family, claiming cultural resistance. This prevented her from seeing his existing life and asking questions that might reveal inconsistencies. He was always too busy with work to engage deeply with her Filipino community connections. Warning sign: when someone keeps their different life segments completely separate, they're usually hiding something. Healthy relationships involve integration, not isolation. Stage 4, financial control. Khalil provided everything: visa, home, money, which created dependency. Rosa had no independent income, no legal status separate from him, no financial resources to leave if things deteriorated. Warning sign: economic dependence is a cage. Always maintain some financial independence, even in traditional relationships. Separate accounts, emergency funds, documentation of assets in your name. Stage 5, document irregularities. Rosa never questioned why she didn't meet Khalil's family or why their wedding was civil rather than religious. She trusted his explanations without verification. Warning sign: In international marriages, independently verify legal documents through embassies and legal counsel. If your spouse discourages this, that's a massive red flag. These patterns apply beyond international marriages. They appear in employment scams, romantic fraud, and exploitation schemes worldwide. The core principle is always the same. Predators identify vulnerability and exploit it through false promises, rushed timelines, and isolation. Subscribe if you want more deep dive analysis into cases that reveal these patterns. Share this video with someone who might be considering overseas opportunities, romantic or professional. Comment below with the number of red flags you counted in Rose's story. Because knowledge is the only defense against manipulation. Awareness is the only prevention for tragedies like this. And sometimes, the difference between survival and victimization is simply knowing what questions to ask before it's too late. Rose's story isn't just about one woman's fight for survival. It's about systemic failures that allow exploitation to flourish. It's about economic desperation that makes people vulnerable to promises wrapped in lies. It's about how quickly dreams can become nightmares when the person you trust most is hiding who they really are. The villa in Al Barsha was sold after the trial, purchased by a new family with no knowledge of the bloodstain underneath professionally refinished marble. The Persian rugs were donated to charity. The decorative dagger that became murder weapon was destroyed as evidence no longer needed. But the lessons remain. The warning signs persist. The patterns continue in other cities, other countries, other lives balanced on the edge of desperation and hope. Remember Rosa Delgado, not as a killer, but as a survivor. Not as a victim, but as a woman who fought back when fighting back was the only option left. And most importantly, remember that the most dangerous lies are the ones we want to believe because they promise escape from circumstances we can no longer endure. Justice came for Rosa, but prevention is better than justice. Recognition is better than recovery. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a dream that requires you to ignore your instincts. If this story saved one person from a similar fate, then Rosa's tragedy has meaning beyond the trauma it created. If one viewer recognizes these patterns in their own relationship and asks the hard questions before it's too late, then this video served its purpose. Stay safe, stay aware, and never let desperation silence the voice that warns you when something doesn't add up. Like this video if you learned something. Subscribe for more deep dive true crime analysis. Share with someone who needs to see these warning signs. And remember, your life is worth more than any promise someone else makes about your future. The Rosa Delgado Foundation provides free legal consultations for overseas Filipino workers. Resources and contact information are linked in the description below. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and trust yourself when something feels wrong. Your instincts exist for a reason,